Frederick Douglass was born Frederick Bailey in Maryland in either 1817 or 1818. His mother was an enslaved woman, and his father was a white man rumored to have been his mother's enslaver. He saw very little of his mother as a child because she lived on a different plantation 12 miles away. Douglass's mother died when he was only 7 years old, and he was raised by his grandmother.
Slave named Harriet in February 1818.
He knew who his mother was, although she was a distant figure in his life. She lived on another plantation. He never really knew who his father was, although he came to believe that his father was definitely a white man and probably his master.
His master, Aaron Anthony, lived in the large white house that stood at the entrance to the plantation. It was part of a group of farms owned by a man known as Colonel Edward Lloyd.
Frederick Douglass was the most famous African American of the 19th century. He published 3 autobiographies. 2 of them were bestsellers. He was a household name by mid-century. He was better known than Lincoln until the 1860 presidential election. He was one of the first African-American fiction writers. He was a publisher and editor. He edited and published the longest-running African-American newspaper. He was the first black man to meet with and advise a United States president. He met with Lincoln 3 times in the White House, advised him, and they defined themselves as friends publicly, which at that time meant equality. And another indication of his fame is that, Zoe and I just did this book on picturing Frederick Douglass. He's the most photographed American in the United States. There are more separate photos of Douglass than of Lincoln, than of Twain, than of any other figure, which is another indication of his fame. During his life, he was most famous as an orator. Today, he's most famous for his narrative. His first autobiography, which is 90 pages, a beautiful lyrical account of his life in slavery, is now widely read in high schools and in colleges. But in his day, he was best known as an orator, and throughout his life, he said he felt more comfortable speaking for the public ear than writing for the public eye. So the first question that I want to answer is, why do very few people read or know about Douglass's speeches today? And if they read Douglass or know of him, they know of him through his photographs or his autobiographies. And the short answer is that oratory was very different in the 19th century than it is today. And
J. K.
What in God's name do you think you're doing?
You didn't mean any harm.
If you give a nigger an inch, he will take a mile. If you teach that nigger how to read, there would be no keeping him. It would forever ruin him to be a slave. We carried you here to take care of Thomas. You'll learn a trade when you're bigger. Ain't no need for you to be reading, boy. No need at all.
I understand, dear. I'll see to it that it's not allowed to be near any more books.
There's nothing more needs saying.
If there was a photographer in the community, they wanted him to sit for a photograph. Although Douglass himself cultivated many of those photographers. He liked having his photo taken. He manipulated some of those photographers. Now,
Father was, although he came to believe that his father was definitely a white man and knew who his father was, although he came to believe that his father was definitely a white man and lived on another plantation. He never really knew who his father was, although he came to believe that his father was definitely a white man. And
at a young age, Douglass was selected to live in the home of the plantation owners, one of whom may have been his father. Though later in life he chose to celebrate it on February 14th. Douglass initially lived with his maternal grandmother, Betty Bailey. At a young age, Douglass was selected to live in the home of the plantation owners, one of whom may have been his father. His mother.
What is the one-drop rule? The one-drop rule is a social and legal principle of racial classification that was prominent in the 20th century in the United States. It asserted that any person with even one ancestor of black ancestry is considered black. Let's
Numbers 1 and 18. And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names, from 20 years old and upward by their polls. Verse 4, and with you there shall be a man of every tribe, every one head of the house of his father. Every one head of the house of his father. So the children declare their pedigrees, meaning their bloodline, by their fathers, not their mothers. See, let's get Deuteronomy 23 and 2. Say, a bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. And that bastard was somebody that was had a Israelite mother and a father of another nation. If his father was from another nation, meaning he didn't have an Israelite father, he was a bastard, and he could not come into the congregation because he was not an Israelite. See, he was not an Israelite. So if he had a son, if he was allowed to come in the congregation and he had a son, that son would not be an Israelite. You see, his children would not be Israelites, and they would be in the congregation. And the Israelites had laws about land and inheritance. So you couldn't give another nation the inheritance that was meant for the Israelites. So these other nations could not come into the congregation of the Israelites, because they would be taking the inheritance of the Israelites that did not belong to them. So the bastard children was not allowed into the nation, because those children was representations of their family. Look at verse 3. And Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever. Meaning none of these heathens or these non-Israelites was going to get land in the land that was promised to the children of Israel. So when the children of Israel is here in America and they being held captive, their children is not, if one of the slave masters, I'm gonna get that too in Isaiah 14. If the slave master impregnate one of these children, it's not gonna that child is gonna be a bastard, because this is what we dealing with here in Babylon the Great. It says, I'm going to start at verse 2. And the people shall take them and bring them into their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, slaves. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. See, the slave master is the oppressor here in America. This is what this Isaiah 14 is talking about. And it says in verse 3 that the Lord will give them rest from their hard bondage. See, they're going to get rest from their hard bondage. Verse 4, that thou shalt take up the parable against the king of Babylon, meaning the slave master, and say, how has the oppressor ceased? See, oppressor is massa. That's why they was on the plantation saying massa. Massa Johnson. Massa this, massa that. This oppressor, his children, if he had a child with one of these slaves, they couldn't come into the congregation. Now, this is what Yahushua, who they ignorantly call Jesus Christ, this is what he was telling his disciples with the parables he was telling them in chapter 13 of Matthew, where it says the sower went forth to sow. See, this parable is talking about this situation. But let me get straight to the point. Here it says, okay, let's see here. I'm going to start at, let's see. Let me start at verse 24. It says, in another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man, the so-called slave master, which soweth, well, no, let me finish. A man which soweth good seed in the field. So that man who was sowing good seed in the field was Jacob. See, the father of the Israelites. Verse 25, it says, but while men slept, his enemy, who was Jacob's enemy? His twin brother Esau. The Edomites was always the enemy of Jacob. They was the slave masters of Jacob. It said, but while men were asleep, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Verse 26. Because see, they would leave them children right there with that slave woman, or sell the child off. But anyhow, verse 26, it said, but when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. See, so when the fruit start being given out, you had tares, those children amongst the regular servants of the Israelites that was in the field serving slavery. 27, it says, so the servants of the household came and said to him, sir, did not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence there has it tares? See, how in the world you got tares around him? Verse 28, he said unto them, an enemy has done this. The servants, the slaves said unto him, where thou then that we go and gather them up? So let's round the tares up, the non-Israelites up, who don't supposed to belong in our congregation. 29, but he said, nay, lest whether ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Because see, these jokers look just alike. It says, verse 30, let both grow together until the harvest, and in the time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. See, he gonna gather the tares and burn them up, because they are Edomites. They was being the daughters of Israel was being raped or forced to have relations with these Edomite dragons, and they produced children by the Edomites. Okay. Now it talks about, here it is, it said, verse 38, the field is the world, the good seed is the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. See, we talking about children. The tares is the children of the kingdom of Israel, the rulership of Israel. The tares are the children of the wicked one. The wicked one is the Edomites, Esau. It says in 39, the enemy that sold them is the devil. See, Esau is the devil. The white man is the one who was in there raping them women, them Israelite women. The harvest is the end of the world. The reapers are the angels. Verse 40, as therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, meaning the nuclear destruction that's coming, so shall it be in the end of the world. So the angels is going to gather them tares, them non-Israelites, who may look like Israelites and don't know that they're non-Israelites. They think they so-called Israelites because they look like Israelites. They're going to gather them and throw them in the fire. They're not going to be getting no inheritance with the Israelites. They're not the children of the kingdom. They're the children of the so-called slave master, the white man. That's who Frederick Douglass was. He was a child of the white man, meaning he was a white man, just like Bob Marley and all of these people with the white, so-called white daddy. Your father, you are what your father is. You're not no bloodline of your mama. See, the women don't get the name of the child don't get the name of the mother. The child get the name of the father. Now, a lot of these women keep the name off the birth certificate, and put their own name on the children, especially in the so-called projects, the experiment that they having with these Israelites in these projects. The women put the name on the children, but traditionally, the father gives the name to the children. The children gets their father's name. They don't get their mother's name because the mother don't pass the seed down. You the seed of your father. Let's see if I can get that. The seed of the father. No, they don't have it in there. But this is how you know the child go back to the seed. Then if when it comes to seeds like in fruits, because this is what they're talking about, fruits and vegetables or plants that have seeds. That seed, when you plant that seed in the ground, what's gonna come out is it's gonna come not looking exactly like what the fruit or plant that you planted, because it depends on where you plant it and it depends on the environment that where you plant it. Sometimes it have differences, but it's still gonna be what it is. It's gonna be, if you plant an apple, it's still gonna be an apple. It might come out green, might come out bigger than or smaller, but it's still gonna be an apple. Same thing with the orange, banana, any other kind of fruit. Once you plant that seed, you're gonna get the same thing that you planted. You're not gonna get something different. So the woman is like an incubator. She don't give nothing but DNA and features. If you get with a Chinese woman and you're a so-called black man, you're gonna get a baby to come out with some Chinese features or Moabite features. If you get with a so-called white woman, the child probably gonna have lighter skin and straight hair. Which Frederick Douglass, he had a white daddy, and so he got more of his mother's features. See, dark hair, dark skin, and wide nose, darker features, or features of his mother. The mother always produced a lot of the features for the child, but the father gives the blood to the child. See, because the seed holds the blood. That seed that is holding the blood, it goes into the egg, and the egg, it develops inside of that egg of the woman, like an incubator. And so that sperm seed, when it goes into that egg, it develops inside of there until it becomes a human, a full human that can be pushed out of this womb of this woman. The woman is feeding the child through the food that she's eating, and the blood, some of the DNA, the chromosomes, what they call it, go into the child and help the child develop. The minerals and the substance goes into this child and feed this child. So she's feeding this child with nutrients, substance, and helping this child grow. Just like a plant, a seed, when you put it in the ground, you ain't got to put it in the ground. You could put a seed in a window with some dirt, and that sunlight gonna make it grow, and that dirt and the nutrients from that dirt gonna make that seed grow. But you're not getting nothing else but that. And this is what's going on with the tares, and mainly what the subject is, Frederick Douglass. See, this is why he was famous. Let's get this picture. Which one? This one here. He was a so-called white man. And when you get older, you kind of see it in this picture. See, he became famous because he got the blessings of Esau. See, he was an Edomite, and he had the blessings from Esau. So that's why he became the most famous person in America, who had his picture taken more than any president, more than anybody in America that was famous before all of this social media with all these pictures popping out. But when they just had Polaroid pictures and pictures that you had to paint, and them old cameras, he had the most pictures of all those so-called Edomites, because he had to live a short period of time of a life as a slave, and that was compensated. See, he still received a blessing and married a white woman, but it was compensated in after he pretty much became a teenager, because at 7 years old he came to pretty much his conscious mind, where he could read and know what's going on. And he still wasn't working in the field like that. He was taking care of the cows and hanging in the big house. Then they moved him to the house where his daddy was at. He lived with his daddy. See? Then he became a teenager, and he pretty much fought the slave master, beat the slave master up. They didn't kill him because he wasn't a freaking slave. He was a child of a free. They was calling him a slave, this one drop rule. And the Edomites are wicked people. See, they punish their own people. They enslave their own people. They cruel to their own people. Genesis 6:4. Edom would take peace from the earth, and because they was given a great sword, they gonna kill one another. See, they wasn't gonna be nice to each other either, even in their blessing that God gave them of their father Esau. But looking at Frederick Douglass, he was given that blessing because he was looked like a so-called black man. He looked like an Israelite, but he wasn't an Israelite. And he didn't live no life as an Israelite. He became grown. He fought and ran away from slavery, started working at the church. He was already reading the Bible on a regular basis, working under these Christianity peoples. Then they hired him to work for some type of newspaper or some kind of organization where he can speak to folk. And they used him because he looked like a Negro, but he had the spirit of a white man. He had the spirit of an Edomite. And the Lord blessed him where he liked the president. People knew him more than they knew Abraham Lincoln. He had more popularity than the presidents. So he was dealing with some of the slavery situation when he was getting beat because he looked like a Israelite, but he was still getting the blessing of the Edomites. That's why he is talked about and famous all through the Edomite kingdom. In the greatest one of the greatest Edomite kingdoms, which is America, one of the greatest Edomite empires, which is America. This man was the most famous. So yeah, he had to go through a little bit of the curses of that Jacob went through, or Jacob was uh promised to go through this punishment, or the curses that was on the Jacob. He experienced some of the curses that Jacob experienced or was going through for a short period of time. But that was a short period of time compared to how long he was not on that plantation and walking around here just like a regular Edomite. See, and he was on presidential status. He finally got when he can get with black women just like his father got with a black woman, but he got with an Edomite woman, married this Edomite woman during the older age because this was his spirit. This was always his spirit. And see, that's why he is the most famous white man that ever lived in America. See, he more famous than Abraham Lincoln and whatever president you can throw out your mouth. See, he was the so-called first black president considered as a black man, so you could say he the first black president that in that regard. But this was a certified white man. Just because he had darker skin and had a black mama, just because a black woman put him in her, well, she didn't put nothing in him, but a black woman had him in her stomach, in her womb, developing. She was developing a child of the Edomite, of Esau. See, Esau slept with. Let me get that real quick to show how this bloodline thing works. Genesis 36, around about the 6th or 7th verse. Look at him. It says, and Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all the people of his house. Okay, so he took wives. Let me see here. Look at verse 2. It says Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan. So Esau married these freaking Hamite women, black Hamite women. See, and they didn't have to be the color black. They could have been albinos, just like he was an albino, because people like to get with people that they have something in common with. See, because Negroes will try to say, oh, he was black and all this kind of crap. But he could have got with some albinos, because Africans have albinos in their country and they outcast them, and so they would be willing to give Esau they daughter that's albino, and then all the other nations he was marrying. See, he could have been collecting all kind of albino women. But anyhow, either way it went, even if he did get with somebody of a dark complexion, the child was gonna come out light, and then they was gonna stay with the Edomite bloodline, because this is how things was going back then. People wasn't worried about your skin complexion. They knew who your father was, and you were just a part of your father's house, and you end up marrying somebody else that looked closer to your father, and that's when their kingdom start to multiply. Because look at him. It says here, say the sons of Esau, who is Edom, and their dukes. Oh, verse 31. it says, and these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. So the Edomites had a kingdom, and they had multiplied and got organized way before the Israelites had a king and got all the way organized with a homeland. So you see, this is what's going on with Frederick Douglass. He come from that bloodline of Edom. And let's get the blessing real quick. I'll close out with the blessing. Genesis 27. This is why he was the most famous white man in America. Starting at 38, it say, and Esau said unto his father, have thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. 39, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. Verse 40, and by thy sword thou shalt live, and thou shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when thou shall have the dominion or rulership, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Now look at that. He had to serve. See, Frederick Douglass had to serve right along with when he got freed. He was dealing with the rulership of Esau and the prosperity of the Edomites. But he lived just like these Edomites because he was a famous man. People was taking his picture. As soon as he hit the scene, you got people trying to take his picture. So he put him on a pedestal. And these Edomites back then knew that he had he was a child of a slave master. They wasn't that ignorant, man. They was not that ignorant. They knew he was a child of a slave master. See, at the end of the day. And he lived in the house with his father, so ain't no telling his father could have still been alive and still communicating with the peoples and saying, that's my child now. Don't forget that that's my child, even though, you know, he looked like a Negro, but it's still my child. So I just want to bring that out because these people keep talking about Frederick Douglass, and they can to Frederick Douglass when he is a certified white man. You're not kin to no white man. But I'm going to leave it there. All praises to Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, Hashem Kakadash, double honors to the elders pushing the truth. Peace to the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Descendants of slaves scattered around the globe on slave ships and through many captivities. Our kingdom is at hand. Shalom.